All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Math Videos with Eldred. Name of the game today, what do these three things have in common? We have this lovely item. You're pretty rad, and so are we. And this guy. Interesting. So the topic for today is slope. Slope is the name of the game. Now we're just going to cover the first half of 3.5 today because it's a ginormous chapter, section I mean, and slope is a really big deal. So in Math 1 you really need to understand what the meaning of slope is. So I'm going to give you multiple definitions today. This is again just the first half of 3.5. So slope is, number 1, a measure of steepness. Definition number 1 is a measure of steepness. Definition number 2, slope is also a rate of change. And we always read slope left to right because we're American and we read left to right. So slope is left to right as well. Mathematicians thought we'd jump on that train from language arts. So slope is a measure of steepness. It's how steep something is. Here's a couple examples. Let's say we have this line. This line in purple. We want to talk about how steep this line is. So we describe that using slope. If we're reading this left to right, because again, we are American, would you say this is going uphill or downhill? If you had to hike this from left to right, you'd say it's going uphill. So going uphill left to right indicates a positive slope. Now, if you were going to measure the steepness of this line, I would say, meh. I mean, that's a hill to climb. If I was going to have to walk up this line, that's a hill, but it's not vertical, and it's not really flat either. So I'm going to go medium steep. And a medium steep line is going to have a slope of about 1. This happened to be a positive slope, so this is about 1. If it was going the other direction and looked more like my pen here, then it would have a slope of -1. So that's why I wrote the absolute value of the slope is about 1. 1 or -1 if it was negative. This is a positive slope. So it's going to be somewhere around 1. Medium steep. Let's take a look at another line. Again, we're talking about steepness. This is line number 2. Again, we're reading left to right because America. Is this going uphill or downhill? Downhill. Yeah, you'd be sliding down a slide. So this is going downhill, which indicates that it is a negative slope. Downhill indicates a negative slope. And if you were going to talk about how steep this slide was, would you let your child slide on this? Well, you're students yourself, so you don't have children. Would you let your little baby brother slide down on this thing? Probably not. He'd get some good speed going down. This is a very steep slope. It looks, I mean, if I was a skier, which I am a novice, this would be pretty scary. I mean, I'm talking Black Diamond. That looks pretty steep to me. Very steep. It's going to have an absolute value slope of greater than 1. So in this case, it's negative. So a negative number greater than 1 could be -2, could be -3, -4, -5. Okay, it's going to have an integer, a negative slope, but a number greater than 1. If it was positive, it would be a number like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 for the slope. So a very steep slope is going to have a number greater than 1 to describe it. Let's look at one final line. This guy. If I read it from left to right, I would be walking uphill. So uphill, again, indicates a positive slope. So you know your answer is going to be positive when we start to quantify slope. Uphill means positive. And if you're talking about steepness, I mean, this is a moderate hill. There is some incline, right? It's not flat ground, but it's not so bad. I could probably jog that. So I'm going to say not very steep. This line is not very steep. That means that the absolute value of the slope is going to be less than 1. So for a positive slope, we're talking this could be 1/2, it could be 1/3, it could be 2/3. It's going to be a fraction, it's going to be less than 1. If it was negative, it'd be -1/2, -3/4. So that's why I wrote that absolute value right there. Negative or positive number that's less than 1 or -1. Okay? So let's show some examples and just kind of wrap our head around the idea of slope. Notes aside for a second, let's just take a look at this so you don't have to write anything down. Here's our line. That's a brown colored pencil. It's awesome. Okay? Here's our man. He has to walk up this slope. From left to right, we always read left to right because, again, America. Would this be a very steep hill for him to climb? Oh, yeah, totally. This guy probably needs a rope. So this is probably a slope of about 4, 5, 6. Okay? As it gets gradually easier, think about it like a treadmill. As you're walking up a treadmill, as the numbers get higher, it gets steeper and steeper on your incline. Have you guys ever pushed the buttons of a treadmill? So this guy's walking up, walking up. Maybe he's getting really tired, so he starts to flatten out his treadmill. Okay, the numbers are getting smaller. Now maybe this is a slope of 2. Okay? About here, we're going to hit the slope of 1. So now we're talking maybe 1/2, maybe 1/3, maybe 1/4, all the way to 0. When you put your treadmill at incline 0, you're walking on flat ground. He is chillin'. Most of the time we spend is on flat ground. That's a 0 slope. Okay, again, he's walking left to right. Now this slope could start turning this way. And now this guy's sliding down a slide. This is a negative slope. This is a small negative slope, so it's probably -1/2. Do you kind of hear how this is becoming a number line? We started way up here with 6, then we kind of went down to 5, 4, 3, 2. We kind of hit 1 around here. Then we were 1/2, and then 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, all the way to 0. And then it starts going negative, -1/2, -2/3, -1. He's really sliding down this slide now. -2, -3, -4, all the way up. Oh man, he's really sliding. This is like a black diamond slope now. He's going down. Now what happens when we get to here? Is he going downhill or uphill at this point? It's really impossible to tell. I can't tell, you can't tell. Mathematicians have not come up with a name for that yet, so this is undefined. We can't tell if it's going uphill or downhill. This is undefined. Okay, falling off a cliff. It's an undefined slope. Okay, so we read this left to right. We've got our little man. This is about a slope of 1. It gets less and less to 0. 0 on a treadmill means flat ground. We've got negative, -1. And if you tilt this all the way, we can't even tell if we're climbing or if we're falling. So it's an undefined slope. Okay, so I hope that helps to give you a visual of what we're talking about with steepness here with our little man. We'll call him Bob.